Welcome back. This is Dave Sharpe with Sharpe Takes. After a bit of a hiatus where my wife and I were able to see our granddaughter graduate from high school, we're back with another episode of Sharpe Takes. I'm delighted today to have a return guest, Ken Fredette, who is with Support for Public Schools. I forget the name of the
Friends of
organization.
Vermont Public Education.
Friends of Vermont Public Education. And he's been monitoring fairly closely what's going on in Montpelier while I've been away. And so, where are we at with public education and the education bill?
Well, it's tumultuous. Tumultuous is a word I would use. It's, as you probably know, it's in conference committee right now.
Right.
And things were going fairly well. That's me. Sorry. It'll go away in a minute. My phone's ringing in my ears.
Oh,
I'm trying to ignore it. So, conference committee, as brief review. Governor Scott came out with a plan that, you know, in January or so, that was released in snippets, and then finally it came out in bill form. The big problem with that one, in many people's eyes, was going to 5 districts statewide. But there was a lot of good stuff in there too. House took that bill, 454, H 454. They worked on it very hard. A lot of research, a lot of fact finding, fact-based information. They sent it over to the Senate, and the last time you and I chatted, I had complimented the Senate and being thoughtful about what they were doing. And as I was driving home
you
to
found out?
Wallingford, I found out they had struck it all and started over again. But that being said, that's the way things work, as you're well aware, under the Golden Dome. And they actually did some good things as well. And at the end of the day, the two bills, the House version, which incorporated some of the governor's stuff, and the Senate version, which incorporated some of the House stuff, they were actually fairly close. And it was going into a conference committee. And as a backstory, a lot of legislators on both the House and the Senate side were like voting for it reluctantly to keep it moving forward. There were a lot of things they didn't like, but they saw it as a path forward, and I agree with that. But what happened was when it got to conference committee, things seemed to be going along pretty good. And then I think it was May 30th, Friday the 30th, in the 11th hour, the Senate side of the conference committee came back with these new proposals out of nowhere, and not really the way the process is supposed to work. You're supposed to look at the two bills and come to a middle ground. You aren't supposed to start throwing new proposals.
Yes.
And those new proposals were blatantly carving out special provisions for private and independent schools. And the House side of the conference committee, Peter Conlon, said, "But this is all new stuff and it hasn't been vetted. These numbers are coming out of who knows where." So they just kind of dropped back. They took a week off. And then this past Monday, the House had been meeting with education leaders and stakeholders and the administration, and they forwarded a new plan over to the Senate, and they met yesterday, Wednesday, for the first time. And again, they seem to be working through and gradually coming together. But how it's going to all sugar off remains to be seen. It seems to me and a lot of other people that the roadblock is the independent schools looking to get favors. And the composition of the conference committee on the Senate side is eyebrow raising, I should say. Two of the senators have direct connections to independent schools, and they are blatantly saying, well, we want these favors. And Senator Bongartz, I was listening yesterday, and when he was talking about Burton, which is a fine school, they do a great job, and 4 historic academies, they are part of Vermont education landscape and have been for a long, long time. There's no argument there. But when he's talking about how things have been at Burton, he said we, and as if he's lobbying for them.
Yes,
and it seems an inappropriate role to be chair of Senate Ed and
a lobbyist
influencing the conference committee heavily when we're all trying to get to what's best for kids, what will help alleviate the tax burden on Vermonters and make our education system a little better. This business of providing special carve-outs. You know, Friends of Vermont Public Education, our mantra is if you have public dollars going to a school, that school needs to play by the same rules as public schools. It's pretty simple. And if they did that, all this opposition, all this drama would go away.
Yeah.
The 25% opposed to 51%, all this stuff that is being hashed out, the waiting high school students, it all goes away if everybody is playing by the same rules.
Yeah.
So, did that answer your question?
Sort of. I mean, so two things arise out of it. So what you're saying then is essentially the independent schools community is saying we are unwilling to play by the same rules as public schools.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I've heard many times we are different, so we need different rules, and that is the problem. They kind of talk out of both sides of their mouth sometimes, depending upon who their audience is, what the narrative is that they want to convey. It's well, we and have served for a couple hundred years in some cases many students in rural Vermont that there are no public schools to serve them. And I get that. We all get that. That's fine. And but then when they're talking about money, they say, well, it's only 4%. To pick a number, I've heard various numbers. 96% of students in Vermont go to public schools, 4% to private, independent schools. And so then they say, oh, it's a pittance in the budget.
Why
So
are you worried?
why are we worrying about
Yeah.
that 4%? But it's millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And they don't accept all students. Sometimes they purport that they do, but when they are testifying to Senate Ed, and private interests did a lot of testifying to Senate Ed when compared to, that 96% to the 4%, it was pretty lopsided toward private and independent schools. And they come up with all these grandiose things, and we accept all students, no question. But then they brag about their graduation rate, how many of their kids go on to college, and those numbers don't align with accepting all students. It doesn't seem like their populations are very diverse.
Yeah.
So uh, that's an issue. And again, if they take tax dollars, but they don't show us their books. It's questionable if they do accept all students openly. And following that, there are disciplinary actions that there's no oversight of them. They just can do what they want. Whereas public schools show us their budgets detailed, audited every year, line by line. And there are many, I shouldn't say many, there are some private schools that are already that far away from playing by all the same rules that public schools do. So it doesn't really pass a straight face test when you have some of these schools saying, oh, we can't possibly do that. That would be the end of us. Because these schools are doing it, and they're doing fine. And they're serving all the kids.
And behind all of this, isn't there the big stick of the governor that's playing into this somehow?
Oh, yeah. So you have the House and the Senate, and the governor is always looming over it all, saying no spending. He has a very narrow focus. He absolutely will not accept any spending beyond what we're spending right now. And he also has a timeline that was kind of crazy. I think it's being balanced out now for how all this is going to get implemented. But you can't just, as you know, being a former legislator, these things take time. They have to be thought out. You have to look at facts. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that we are moving in a good direction. But yesterday, let me back up the truck a little bit. June 2nd, I was testifying to the Commission on the Future of Public Education. And by the way, and I'm not alone in this, a lot of people want to see them continue their work because they've been doing good work, especially with public outreach. But I was testifying to them over Heartland CTE and on the 2nd. And at the same time, Vermont Edition was doing a live broadcast with Lola Dufort, Ethan Weinstein, and Allison Novak. So Lola's with Public now, Ethan's with VT Digger, and Allison's with 7 Days. So 3 power hitters for education reporters. And just about at the same time, I referred to the previous Friday's conference committee meltdown as a circus. Right about the same exact time, unbeknownst to me at the time, Ethan Weinstein was using the same term. Well, it turned into a circus, and it was. It was crazy. So I'm hoping it continues to move in a positive direction. But there are many groups, my group included, that especially after that May 30th meltdown, say just say no. Let's start over again next year. Pick up some of the good things, but just don't try to force something in for the sake of having something done. It needs to be done correctly.
How explain to me how on earth the governor can think that there should be no more spending on schools when the Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the insurer for most of the educators and most of the school employees, whether they're educators or not, are calling for a 20% increase in their premiums. How does that jive?
Well, it doesn't. It's an excellent question because, again, I think I said just a few minutes ago that it's narrow. It's a narrow focus. No more new spending. And what's happening is schools are cutting their budgets just to get them approved. And schools are closing, schools are losing programs, they aren't being able to provide for the students. I've always said education is a front-loaded investment. You invest in it now, and you get your return down the road. So to say no new spending is crazy. I mean, because that health insurance is a classic example, but there's also things that have been put on to school districts that mental health, providing for mental health services that maybe should be in the Agency of Human Services. Uh, Independent schools like to boast that they don't cost taxpayers anything with building maintenance because they do all that themselves. But that kind of falls flat when you look at the fact that public schools haven't had any infrastructure support from the state since what, 2008, I think?
A while, yeah.
Yeah. So there are all these costs, and just to say no new spending is short-sighted,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
So I think the governor and others talking about consolidation believe that we can reduce costs, maybe. More importantly, we can increase opportunities for
Yes.
children. So, does your organization support consolidation? Should we be moving in that direction, whether regardless of what the legislature does?
Consolidation being, I have experience with consolidation at the Mill River District. I was chair of the Rutland South Supervisory Union back in the day, and we consolidate just our boards. So the short answer to your question is, yeah, we do support some sort of governance structure change. There are other groups that want to keep their supervisory union models, which is understandable from their perspective, but there's got to be a middle ground. Friends of Vermont Public Education was supporting the House version of the bill until things started going crazy in the conference committee. And many of these other groups, rural school groups, have been saying, no, 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 just kill this bill. So Friends more recently took on the position of not supporting the version of 454.
So you spoke about supporting governance consolidation. Don't we have too many school buildings in the state?
Yeah, a good point. We do. And I think what it all comes down to, as I understand it, and I believe I'm correct about this, people want to protect their small rural elementary schools. There are some opportunities for consolidating buildings at the middle school level and certainly at the high school level. So there are those things. The question is how to draw how to draw the lines on these districts. And one of the things that happened on the Senate side before I got to conference committee is they restricted they called it the redistricting task force, I guess, for
Yeah,
drawing new district lines.
yeah.
It was 6 legislators, 3 from the House and 3 from the Senate. And that's when we said, no, 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 you need to
The
have,
Senate said that.
yes.
the
The
House
House had a more
committee was
diverse.
different.
The House
Yeah.
had a more diverse, including some legislators, but and they've come to a middle ground on that now. But including professional educators,
Yeah.
former school board members, former superintendents, business managers, people who know education. And this is a point that I was bringing to the Commission on the Future last Monday, and I've said it many times: education should not be political. Period. And you spoke earlier to the governor. One of the big issues when I was president of the VSBA, it was about the time Peter Shumlin was elected governor, and he pushed for the governor appointing the Secretary of Education, changing it from a department and a commissioner to an agency and a secretary that answers to the governor, whoever is sitting in that chair, instead of the State Board of Education. And we fought that tooth and nail, and now we see why. It's all becoming politicized, and education should not be political,
Mm.
period. And we need to rely on education experts and not let politicians be solely in control, and especially when we see politicians protecting their own private interests, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the governor at some point in time was making more noise about all the rulemaking would move from the state board to the agency. Well, the agency is understaffed, has been since the times of Jim Douglas. They aren't able to provide the oversight they need there's been a lot of press about problems at therapeutic schools, and the agency is way behind on approving independent schools, like years and years behind. And some of our most vulnerable students are not being protected.
Yeah.
So it all comes back to, let's get the politics out of it. Let education experts work on this with the blessing of politicians. But that's where I stand on it, and it's always been my position. But also, my position is take care of the kids first. Everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
And we
So
see we see some politicization. I'm having trouble with my, but that not necessarily has the best interests of the kids at heart.
yeah. So, thinking back on Act 46, that was a consolidation bill
Hmm.
that I think your board consolidated its governance under Act 46, and you know things that the legislature does are often imperfect. And one of the things criticisms that I look at back at Act 46 and think that we did a reasonable job, or Act 46 did a reasonable job protecting elementary schools, local community schools. We did not do enough with sticks or incentives to move towards um, consolidating high school at the high school level. We took testimony in the committee at that time that this high school or that high school obviously should close. And yet the legislature didn't put in 46 enough strength to get those schools to close. And I think that's part of what we're looking at now is that that should have happened and didn't. So now we have high schools out there that are trying to struggle along with too few students, not giving the opportunities to high school students that they deserve.
Yep, that's quite correct. And just for a small point of clarification, we consolidated under Act 153, even though Act 46 had been in place. For some reason that escapes me now, I think I mentioned this before. We did it under 153, but all we did was consolidate the boards.
Yeah.
And we actually provided more protection for our two small schools. We have two, what we call mountain schools, Tinmouth and Shrewsbury. They're geographically isolated, they're small, but they are actually better protected now that we've consolidated because of our articles of agreement.
Yeah.
And in the House proposal of 454, they do have verbiage for having school districts and towns have a say in closing their schools. And but to your point, it would make a lot of sense to consolidate some of these at the high school level and work with the technical centers, set up districts that are aligned there. I don't profess to have all the answers, but consolidation is a dirty word for a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially in the rural districts. But it's worked very well for us at Mill River. And now what's going to happen? Are we going to become part of a district that's all of Bennington and Rutland County? How is that going to work? I don't know. But clearly, the primary goal is to provide better opportunities for the students. And that's what we did in Rutland South when we became the Mill River Unified Union.
So that's the goal.
Mhm.
And we're talking about, regardless of what bill you're looking at, or the governor's office, we're talking about bigger districts that include more than one high school. Um, do you think there's enough incentive or sticks, penalties, or in place in either bill that's coming out of the legislature that is actually going to close some high schools?
Well, schools are closing now regardless because they just don't have the students to support them. This has to be a long and thoughtful process. And again, I don't profess to have all the answers. I think I've mentioned here before that I thought I knew Vermont pretty well from my former lifetimes, but I'm learning a lot more about it now. So again, I don't have the answer. I know over in the Rochester Bethel area, they closed like 4 or 5 high schools. My daughter was working at Chelsea, and she had to move on because she saw the writing on the wall there. But yeah, there are a lot of opportunities at Mill River. We just consolidated. We were out. Rutland South was already coordinating our curriculum and our special ed services and things
Yeah,
like that. So
yeah,
we were pretty low hanging fruit. Where it's going to go from here, who knows? But again, I'll just double back to let's protect our rural elementary schools as best we can because they are the heart of many communities.
yeah.
And from there on, my grandson goes to the old Rutland High School that I graduated from 52 years ago. And it's kind of odd going to concerts there in that auditorium where I spent so many
I
years. But
bet
it's
so.
it's
Yeah,
a it's a bigger school for the middle school areas in Rutland City. They're of course a district. So and I think it works very well. Where we go from here, again, it's a question of time, making thoughtful choices. And the Commission on the Future is a classic example of being given an impossible timeline to come up with all these answers. And now both of these bills, both versions of 454 being considered, provides for them, especially public input. They've been gathering public input
yeah.
from all over the state. So that's an important thing.
So you think the Commission for Public Education will continue and will have a similar or expanded or contracted mission?
I believe the latest version is a contracted uh, scope of work, and I think the original sunset date is now back to December 1st of this year, December 31st of this year, uh, uh, which was the original intent. But what happened was they got derailed. They just started their work, and then Governor Scott came out with this. Well, here's 5 districts. That's what we're going to do, and if you don't do what I say, I'm going to veto it. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
come on, let's let this commission do their work. They're doing good work, and they got completely derailed with studies the administration had hired that were not applicable to Vermont. And they're back on track now. They're just an excellent group of clear thinking individuals, and the rural schools are represented, the independent schools are represented, and they're doing a lot of thoughtful work. Peter Conlon, the chair of House Ed, is on that commission.
yeah,
And, I don't think he's going to be there at the next meeting on Monday, the 16th, because I suspect he's going to be under the Golden Dome. That's when the veto session starts. But they're doing great work, and I have a lot of faith in their abilities, so I support them. And again, we'll see where everything goes, but it needs to be thoughtful. This wham bam, let's get it done. And let me just double back to Act 46 a little bit.
yeah,
I want to clarify. I hear a lot of drum beats that you said that was going to save a lot of money. We never said that in Rutland South. As a matter of fact, at meeting after meeting, I personally stood up and said, we don't see a lot of money being saved here. We're talking maybe $300,000, pulling from memory, in about a $10 million budget at the time. not chump change, but it's not going to solve all the taxpayers'
Right.
woes. And so when they say, well, Act 46 was supposed to save money, and Act 46, the primary goal was better opportunities for kids. And where money was saved, it might be spent differently. So it balances out. I think you brought this up.
I think the evidence is pretty much that where money was saved, it was spent on more opportunities for children, one way or another, either being able to keep a course that they would have had to close because of budgetary concerns, or being able to meet mental health issues or some COVID issues. All of these things sort of came about at the same time.
Hmm.
So trying to parse out what was savings and what was money being spent elsewhere is very difficult. So it a lot of the chatter around 46 depends goes back to what your prejudices were while it was being passed, not with what in fact happened in various school districts.
I think Act 46 had a lot of good intentions. And I think now looking back, there are some people who think they were bamboozled, so to speak. And so
Because it
that may,
didn't save money.
yeah, and close schools, or
Yeah.
it was a effort to close schools, which I personally never saw it as that way, but I can see where in some cases that
Well,
would
in
be the
this
case.
county, three superintendents used the opportunity of Act 46 to propose exactly that.
Yeah.
So you can see where, well, although I considered it a misuse of Act 46, that you can't always, the unintended consequences of whatever you do sometimes is startling.
As you pointed out earlier, legislation is far from perfect usually, and down the road you say, "Oh, we didn't get this quite right," and you tweak it. But coming back to the money aspect of it, again, when Jim Douglas was governor, he tried to, and Peter Shumlin was Senate pro tem, they were working on a cap, school budgets no more than 3 or 3.5%
Right,
increase every year.
right.
And I'm like, I wrote to the governor. I said, well, I'm chair of the Wallingford Elementary Board, and our budgets haven't gone above 1 or 1.5% for years, and yet our tax rate is going like this. So tell me how a cap is going to help us. So I'm opposed to cap and no more spending. There are ways to alleviate the burden on taxpayers right now
Yeah.
without upending our entire education system.
One of the things that really bothers me is this governor has neither in his legislative career nor as governor for years has said boo about education.
Mhm.
No proposals, no recommendations, nothing. And now he comes in with a plan and he says, "My way or the highway."
Mhm.
It's somewhat disconcerting that we seem to have a dysfunctional system where we can't talk about things as they develop and given time for good plans to work out. It's disconcerting, and I'm concerned about the future of education because of the rapid pace we're trying to correct issues that started 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
And this comes back to politicians being in charge of education instead of educators being in charge of education. You bring up a good point. And when Jim Douglas was governor, I said wrote in letters to the editor and said on many occasions, his only education policy is it costs too much. And we're hearing kind of the same thing from Phil Scott. And you bring up an excellent point. He's starting his ninth year. He's governor for 8 years. 6 of those years, nothing. And last session, there was a Democratic supermajority. So he pointed to that and said, I can't do anything because
It's
they
their
override me.
fault. Yeah.
It's all their fault. And now he's got some more Republicans, and all of a sudden he comes out of the blocks with 5 school districts, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And you bring up an excellent point. Where was he for the first 8 years?
Well, and then I think he spent about 8 years in the Senate.
Yeah.
It was a long tenure as a legislator
Yeah.
where he didn't say much.
I'll just quote something. I know we're probably running late here, but something I said to the Commission on the Future last Tuesday is like in 2008 or 9, Peter Herman was president of the VSBA, and he also was on the board of the Thetford Academy. And one night the VSBA board was talking about something that was going on under the Golden Dome, and Peter said, Legislature should just stay out of education matters. That should be left to duly elected school directors working with professional educators. And what happened on May 30th proves Peter's point. He was a man ahead of his time. Like, just let educators take care of education. And I understand we have to have statutes. Obviously, we have to have some sort of umbrellas, but it gets too political. That's where the ox cart gets upset. And we got to focus on the kids and closely following that, the taxpayers. But we don't have to just turn the education system on its head to do that.
Okay, so we have run out of time. I want to thank you very much for watching this episode of Sharpe Takes. We're going to keep looking at education policy as it evolves. It's not done yet, obviously. Thanks for listening.
Want to be a guest on Sharpe Takes? Have an opinion you want Dave to hear about? Email davesharpe@gmavt.net.